Let me introduce you to Matteo Tardelli, project architect and consultant, and also our author of the book, The Salmon Leap, a career coaching book for PhDs. So welcome. I'm really excited that you're here, and I would say I give the floor to you now.
Thanks so much for the nice introduction, Tamara. That was really nice. So nowadays, that's what I'm doing. I'm a life science consultant at Prescouter, which is a company based out here in Chicago. But I've been transitioning like a few times already after my PhD and postdoc. So that was something I wanted to share with you guys. And hopefully you can kind of share some thoughts also with me, take on some messages, some learnings in regards to that, and really, try to really be intentional about your career as well. So let's just go back a little bit in time and start where, I basically joined my PhD program back in Vienna, actually. After my master's, in fact, since I studied human nutrition science, I wasn't really happy at all with the job prospects I was having. So, and I was dreaming for some time to really, become an academic, right? So it's also the kind of perspective you get from the outside of academia is like, wow, I'm going to be in the lab doing weird stuff, and science is really cool as well, right? So, back in the days after my master, I was, about probably 25 years old or something like that. I was really looking for a PhD back in Europe. And at that time, I lived in London, and it was really actually very difficult to land a PhD position back then. And, looking around in Europe, I found this group at the AKH, at the Medical University of Vienna, that was really interesting because they were doing research within obesity and type 2 diabetes. So it was something really that I was definitely, interested in. So I was back in the days in London, really working in a pharmacy as a nutritional therapist. So we used to have some basically clinics within the pharmacy, and I used to basically advise patients on their dietary kind of habits. And so this job, it was a kind of fixed job, and it was kind of secure, but it was something that I really didn't like. So I actually accepted this offer because back in the days I really had no lab experience whatsoever. So my employer back in the days told me, okay, we'll give it a try. We're not going to be 100% guaranteeing that you'll get a PhD, but come over to Vienna and we'll try out for a month and we'll see what happens. So, the kind of, it was exciting and daunting at the same time. It was like, wow, I get this opportunity. This sounds amazing, but, I'm really throwing my job security in the trash, and then really kind of moving to Vienna without really knowing what my future would look like. So I think there was interesting time. I think I proved myself in the lab, and then shortly after I got offered this PhD position that was for a little bit more than 3 years. So, the time there was really nice, a lot to learn, a lot of interesting science as well. And after that, really shortly after that, since we were collaborating with another group within the same institution, within the AKH, basically at some point after my PhD, I basically decided to join this other group as a postdoc. So I think this decision was really not really thought through. If I look back at myself, back in the days, because it was something it felt something natural for me, really to start a postdoc. But I really, also back in the days, didn't really know what to do next. And I was like, okay, this is in front of me. It's another lab. I know the institution pretty well. I know the people. So I was like, okay, why not? Let's take this. So this was my first postdoc, and it was, as I said, in another part of the ACHA. But to be honest, like the amount of different colleagues, and also we were like doing different science as well. This one was still metabolic diseases, but with a focus to liver. So it was a little bit more. It was a little bit different because in the other lab I was doing more adipose tissue kind of related stuff. So the learning curve was also there. It was an exciting time. But that really, like if I would go back in time and I would advise myself on what to do, probably I would think about it a little bit more in detail, right? Because it doesn't mean that if you have like an option in front of you is the right one for you, right? So I think this first postdoc was really nice because it got me like really to learn new techniques in the lab. It got me to travel abroad until I actually landed a conference talk in San Francisco back in 2019, where I actually approached my boss, my boss for my second postdoc in New York. What I did there was basically, so I had this presentation that I was going to present at this massive liver meeting in San Francisco, and it was already 2 years since I joined this lab, this first postdoc lab, and I was like, okay, well, as everyone else in my field and in many fields, you always want to experience also the way that research is done in the US, right? It's really different in comparison to what we do in Europe. And it's something like, it feels like it's something as a career propelling kind of event, right? So you see all these PIs also back in Europe, they've been to Yale, they've been to Cornell, they've been to these important universities in the US. And it really feels like something that you kind of have to do as a postdoc to really come back to Europe and make it, so to say. So I was like, okay, I was looking around in the US a little bit and really found a really interesting lab in New York City at Weill Cornell, which is an Ivy League university, a really beautiful building and a great university, and they really do like amazing research there. So back in the days, I was looking around and I found this professor that was going to be then my future boss. And basically what I did, I was like, of course, I knew that he was coming to this meeting because it's one of the biggest meetings in the field. So I just reached out to him, like really like a cold email. Of course, my former boss knew him, but I reached out to him and I said, can we have a chat? I'd really like to, get to know you and get to know what your research is about. And he got back to me like pretty much straight after. And we basically set up a meeting in a talk kind of area, basically at the conference. So what happened there was that I met this guy at, and we basically walked from this talk to the poster session within this conference. And this was basically my interview process with him, which sounds like incredible, right? So I spoke to him. I was like, okay, I know a bit of your research. It's really interesting, blah, blah, blah. He was doing much of the talking. And then at some point, it was like, you can imagine like how long a walk from a talk session to a poster is. It was probably 5 minutes. But at the end of the talk, at the end of this chat with him, he was like, okay, why don't you come to my lab and we give it a try? I was like, wow, okay. So, also that makes you also think about the interview process that you get in academia. It's completely, so many times it's really informal, and these things happen like all over again. So basically, we approached this poster session, and he actually introduced me to my future colleagues from his lab. And I shortly after moved to New York City, spent a couple of years there, and there I think it was also like another learning from me because I really realized that also because also in New York it's a lot about money, a lot about status, because the city is so expensive, right? So I think the postdoc salaries are not really up to date, or like comparable to the kind of life and everyday life kind of expenses you have in New York, right? So I was really like looking around and trying to understand what was happening also outside academia. And I really realized that, a scientist position in private will make like double of my salary. And this was, to be honest, quite annoying. And I was like, okay. And also, on the other hand, I was pretty sure by then, by my second postdoc, that I didn't really want to pursue the tenure track kind of career direction. So I didn't really want to become a professor. And so it was time for me, I guess, after almost 9 years in academia to really take the leap and find an industry job. And this process wasn't so easy, I would say. I was joining a lot of events like this one that we're having today with some panel speakers and people that are talking and they're sharing their experiences. So I was learning quite a bit from these people. And also I was approaching career coaches. So it was a lot of, generally speaking, a lot of networking activities there, meaning that I was just starting to approach people, to talk to them, to really figure out what my next career steps were. In the meantime, like COVID hit and everything, so we're really deciding to actually slowly move back to Europe. And in this process, I also wrote my book, in which I basically tried to summarize really all the kind of learnings that I got with this from talking to these people. And I think it got out like as a nice work. And I'm writing a second one, by the way. So I'm really trying to talk to people even more than before and really figure out also for myself what career paths are out there for us as PhDs. So going back to my postdoc, I found then basically this company from Boston with research facilities in Vienna. And I decided to apply for that. And going through there was a scientist position, by the way. So a bench scientist position at a biotech. So I think this was a very nice experience, and moved back to Vienna. Basically got exposed a lot to the also industry life, which is very different from the bench work we do in academia, right? So for instance, what I can say from that experience is that projects are really collaborative. That's really like you're working as a team towards like shared goals, rather than having a project for yourself that you're basically almost running alone. Or at least that was my experience in academia. I was given a project, I was running my experiments. I might have had some collaborators for sure outside, but I was, the project was mainly run by myself. While in biotech, this is really not the case. So we have different, goals, different projects, but each team really works together towards one goal. And it's also a lot of meetings, a lot of time that you spend basically aligning with other teams as well. So I would say my time was split in between, like, let's say 50% bench work, and the other part of the time was either planning experiments, organizing data, presenting, and basically meetings and catching up with people, and other part of the management. They were all spread out a little bit in Vienna, a little bit in the US, in Boston. So I think overall, the experience itself was pretty amazing. A lot of learnings also there to take home. But in the meantime, also, I realized that slowly I was getting tired of bench work. So, you've been at the bench already for 9 years, right? So, sometimes you're like, okay, well, I'm still loading the Western blot and it doesn't work, or all these like kind of frustrations that you get from the bench life as well. It's very interesting and it's cutting edge, and I get it. It's interesting when you get like your finding, the really exciting finding, but on the other hand, I think most of the daily life is really frustrating. Or maybe it was just not for me, right? So what I understood with time also that the biotech that I was getting really tired of bench work itself. So I was basically then looking. Then, with COVID and all this situation, also my partner was still like working remotely for a US company. So we really, it was a little bit of a bumpy ride in that regard. So I was pretty much stuck in Vienna, going to the office pretty much every day. And while on my private life, things were a little bit kind of shaky in that regards. So basically after some, I really took the decision to leave that job at the biotech because there were no really opportunities for me outside the bench, so to say. So they got me as a bench scientist. They liked what I was doing as a bench scientist, and they just wanted to basically keep me as I was. But I didn't want to work at a bench anymore. So what I then found afterwards, in the meantime, we moved out of Vienna, we started traveling, and we really joined, so to say, nomadic life, in which we spent winter in Mexico. I've been in the US, right now in California, and I took on this job right now that is basically a life consultant job. I was doing this already back in New York a little bit on the side. So basically what I was doing on the side back in the days, it was a bit of an analyst job. So this company, for instance, really hires you as a freelance. As you all know that you have some time, like free time in between experiments, right? Many times actually. And so I was joining these projects and really working at my own pace, depending on what they needed. So I already had a kind of understanding of the consultant life a little bit. So I was really interested to, join full time as a consultant. So after being with them already, like as a part-time kind of analyst for a few years, I really expressed my interest to join full-time. And I think it was the right time also for them because they were looking for talent as well. So I started in November, and I got basically hired as a full-time life science consultant, or the way they call it, project architect or technical project management. And until now, I mean, it's been like 4 or 5 months, right? So it hasn't been so long, but I really like the fact that I'm not at the bench anymore. First of all, I like the fact that I can be wherever I want, and really join and work completely remotely, which really allowed me to also, live my value and the life I wanted, at least for this short time. And the work itself, it's very different from whatever I was doing before. So as a consultant, you really meet a lot with clients. You have really tight deadlines. We actually have a 2 weeks kind of cadence in which we basically work on deliverables that clients are asking, and we basically present to them every 2 weeks. We of course have a team of analysts that do like much of the job for us, but my real job will be basically staff for these analysts, manage them, make sure that they deliver the job right and they answer what the client is really asking us, and then basically distill this finding, put them together in a presentation and present to clients. And it's pretty different from what I was doing back as a postdoc or also in biotech. There's a little bit of an overlap with biotech because also back in the days there was some presentation to different stakeholder, which is the case right now. But I think he really builds a lot of soft skills, such as presentation skills, or really the ability also to summarize and distill a large data set into something that is digestible for the client as well. So these are some skills that I think they're really relevant for this kind of career path. It is like, on the other hand, sometimes a little bit stressful because you have different projects, and also this ties back to the uni kind of time. You say like, I have project management skills because I was managing my project back in the days, right? So, and that's true, but when you get like 4, 5, 6, 7 projects to manage at the same time, then you realize that your project management skills are not there at all. So you manage one project, which is great and fine, but it's very different from managing multiple projects at the same time. So also there was very like a steep learning curve to really understand that. You really need to like prioritize things, projects, and all your activities and tasks according to your calendar, really. So you know that you have 5 projects that you're managing. You know that in 2 weeks you're meeting with one client, with client X, and you're meeting with client Z in next week instead. So you really need to make sure you prioritize client Z, because you're presenting to him like next week. So the presentation needs to be ready, the data set needs to be ready. Well, the other client X, maybe you are still in a phase in which you're preparing like a data set that you basically received from the analyst, or basically you basically deprioritize that. So I think it's really hard to not get overwhelmed by the amount of work that many of these projects can basically throw at you, but it's just a matter of prioritizing things through and really manage these expectations well, also within the team and with the external clients as well. So yeah, long story short, that's where I am right now. Also trying to figure out my next steps in my career, whether it's a good idea to move back to Europe or not, or where in Europe, because it's also like, also there, like I'm asking myself at this stage, really, what I want from my life and what my values are really at. So I really want to prioritize that and really understand, okay, maybe Austria weather is not so nice and I'm really like energized by the sun. Okay. So maybe Austria, Germany, UK are not really countries for me. Right. So, and that's something that I never really thought about before, because I was just applying for stuff. And then wherever the job was, I would just go and move there. But I think nowadays, also after COVID, also work culture really changed a lot with this hybrid kind of remote work. So I think nowadays you can really think of prioritizing sometimes, your personal life kind of needs, and then attach work on top of that. So this to say that is really, also it's a continuous kind of learning curve on the career path, and I'm also trying to figure out what my next steps are, and I'm really trying to look what is happening after consulting. If my experience in biotech and consulting can serve, for instance, a big pharmaceutical in a more strategic position. I know that I don't want to go back to the bench. So, you have different kind of criteria that you can actually fulfill in the choice of your next step in your career. So I think I'm pretty much done. It's exactly 20 minutes, so I nailed it. Good me. No, I'm really happy to discuss and take any questions you might have.
Yes, thank you a lot. Now we will open the discussion, but just one thing, please rename yourself and put your affiliation by pressing the 3 dots right here, so we can see where you're coming from. So yeah, that's one point. And please don't forget our questionnaire. So, and now I'm really looking forward to the discussion. And just if you want to ask your question out loud, you can just raise your hand, or I will just read the questions in the chat. So just write them in the chat. So yeah, first question. What is the most important tip you will give a master student to find his or her way into life scientists, or in the field, to find like one's way?
Talk to people as soon as you can, as soon as possible. Join these events. Really, try to understand what the career paths out there for you are, and also follow up to people like myself, or like any other people that are talking here, because everybody's happy to help. Everyone wants to talk to you, as long as you come with some consistent questions and wasting anyone's time. I think it's really good to start talking to people early on in your career. So try to put that in place. Try to figure out what career steps or paths are good for you. So let's say if you think you want to really become a professor or something like that, and you really enjoy academic research, maybe a PhD is a good point. If you don't, maybe you still want to do the PhD, then do the PhD, but then transition straight away after to industry, or maybe you also fine with your master. But you really need to figure out the different kind of options that are out there for you. And how do you do that? You read stuff. There's a lot of books. There's a lot of blogs out there, really kind of highlighting that. But I think it's much more useful to hear from people. So you really ask people, okay, what's life science consultant? That sounds like, I don't know what that is. So just ask me, and I can tell you. And I'm like, okay, my day-to-day life is, I receive 1,000 emails or whatever. I need to present 10 times a day. So you're like, maybe there's nothing for me. So it's a little bit like that. I think start networking with people and start looking into different paths that for you are interesting. Hope that makes sense.
Maybe the next question is really, how does your normal working day look like?
Oh my God. Okay. I normally have a bit of calls throughout the day. Is it more interesting in the biotech space or in the consultant space? Let's do it like nowadays in the consultant space. Okay, I just get up, do some sports, and then jump on some calls early in the morning. These are normally one-on-one calls with my managers or other team members, and really try to prioritize each day and create a focus for the day kind of list. This really helps me to focus on things that I need to get done. So I'll do that first thing in the morning, get these meetings running, and it really depends on the day. Sometimes I have client calls in which I need to present some findings for some research rounds, or some days I just need to put together a lot of slide decks or presentations, or some days I really need to go through a data set and check whatever it's interesting for the client, and really trying to understand where we're going, and basically then nudge the analyst team accordingly, say, okay, well, this is not the things we are looking for. This is a bit out of scope. So please, let's adapt the direction of this search in this other direction. So it will be it's very it varies a lot. So it really depends on the day. Sometimes I have 2 or 3 client calls, and that makes it stressful. So you need to talk the whole day. And some days I have really almost no calls, and I'm just chilling. No, joking. No, I'm just preparing presentation and prepare basically workbooks and data stuff that is needed for the client. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question is, how did the idea of the first book came to be? And can you give us a glimpse into the second one? For this is still top secret.
It is. The idea for the first one, I think it was really clear that there's not a good kind of tool for academic to get an industry job. Everyone gets at the same point in which you've been in your postdoc for 3-4 years, and then you realize at some point that the funding are running out, or the lab is moving somewhere that you don't want to, or I don't know, these kind of things. And you find yourself like completely unprepared. And you're like, okay, where should I even start? And then you see these like CVs that are like 4 pages long with publications listed that look more like an academic CV rather than a resume for industry. So we really, outside of academia, we really have no idea where to start from, like in terms of applying and landing a job in industry. I realized that's really something missing, I think. And also nowadays, although we have like much more tools in that direction. So I was like, okay, well, I'm trying to figure this out myself. So let's just try to put together something for others that also others can enjoy. So that was the idea behind the book. And, it wasn't really a lot about my experience because I was transitioning at that time. So I knew pretty much how to do it, but it was more by really distilling findings from people that made it already. So that was the idea behind it. So I wanted a tool for myself also to transition, but share the work I was involved in with someone else and with peers and colleagues that were also in the same situation. And the next one is really going to be about, I'm just really talking to a lot of people, like really jumping on calls and interview and really trying to really understand in detail what different industries are like. I mean, I was talking the other day with a few editors at Cell and at Science as well. So really, also for myself, I really wanted to understand what an editor job is like. So I just connected with these people. Some of them are really happy to talk with me. And we just have a chat and I just try to understand what the job is looking like. So I want to really put this together as a tool for others also to understand this. So that's what it's going to be about.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to it. And the next question is also concerning the book. How long did it take you to write your book, and how long it took you to find a publisher?
So the book took, all in all, I think 8 months or something like that. If we consider also there was a phase like at the beginning of that in which I was reaching out and really collecting information, and this was a phase that went all over these 8 months, so to say. So this was pretty much the time it took me. The publisher basically, I got an editor, I got a graphic designer for the cover, and basically I self-published on Amazon. So so it's basically a book that is self-published on Amazon, which is like another thing that you need to learn on the top of everything because it's not easy. But yeah, that's to address the question.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know about this either.
Yeah.
The next question. How can you give an example of how consulting in life science looks like? An example of a project case study. So something we can just know. Something. Yeah.
That sounds good. Yeah. So, for instance, client X is looking for a new, let's say a new vitamin complex for the new line of vitamins or something like that. Let's put it like that. And what our team is doing is then the client is asking, okay, what's the scientific evidence behind it? What's the scientific evidence behind putting in a supplement herbal extracts of ashwagandha, for instance? How does that help, for instance, pregnant women to get through their pregnancy better or something like that? So you have, for instance, a very kind of tailored questions and a focused question that the clients are asking you. You build a statement of work around it, meaning that you really try to figure out the metrics that the client wants to see on the data set. And basically, like this team of analysts really will look on PubMed, will look on clinical trials, will look on products and technologies already that are out there, and really try to summarize that and all the evidence behind ashwagandha in herbal supplement in pregnancy, for instance. And once this data set is back with me, I will just look through it, try to understand whether that makes sense, and then really also trying to read the client, what's interesting for them as well to understand, and put together like a little bit of a slide deck for them, which summarizes this data set. So this is in a nutshell what we are doing. So we're really consulting them on the next steps in their products. We're really this is really different all the time, because the stakeholder you're talking to, it could be like the CEO of that company, or that could be like the R&D lead, or the product development, or the marketing kind of team. So you really need to adapt a little bit your language according to people you're talking to. So that's in a nutshell what a consultant in life science is doing.
Thank you. That sounds really like something you can't really study, like, mathematics or something. So
but you have the background. You have the background with your PhD, so it doesn't matter. The rest of the soft skills, anyway, you don't learn anywhere. So just need to learn, from doing.
So, okay. The next question is kind of leading in this direction. It's which extracurricular activities did you do to make you develop skills that you need for this job? Like, for example, you told us about the presentation skills. Were there any courses, or how did you do it?
Yeah, so basically, back at Cornell, there were some consulting clubs, for instance, within the university. They were doing some programs towards that direction. So I think I never joined it, but I heard some colleagues that did that, and I found it really, really interesting. So sometimes universities have kind of activities towards that direction. Some volunteer experience for sure. I was volunteering for a postdoc kind of association. It's called INET New York City. And I was organizing with them these kind of events as well. So that gets you a little bit of a comms, so to say, experience also in talking to people, presenting to people, reaching out to people, which is always good. And on the top of that, I was, as I said before, was working as a freelance for my same company right now. So this got me a little bit of an exposure to the consulting life. So I was, studying a little bit to do it on the side, and also do some volunteer kind of activities that could actually help me to get there.
Thank you. And also another question: do you need good German language skills at your job?
No. Not at all. It's a company from Chicago, so I'm based in Los Angeles, so not Germany.
That was quick.
But yeah, it's useful. Yeah.
Maybe that's the last question now. It's rather similar, but maybe just to sum up and round up your talk. What are the basic skills one needs to have to become a life science consultant? Maybe just short. And we can wrap it up a little bit. As I said, talking a little bit, having a little bit the bigger picture of and understanding a little bit of a bigger picture, behind the data set, which is something that, again, you don't learn during your PhD. You're normally really focused on one kind of experimental directions or topic, while here you need to have a little bit of a bigger picture kind of approach, and then go in detail. I think this one is really something that you learn slowly, really to step back and really have a look, for instance, at your data set and say, okay, what does it mean in a real life kind of application, which is something that, again, we don't really learn in academia. That's a skill that is
is very important there. Also, like to craft really presentations that are like applicable to like leaders in their field, and this is something that you don't learn anywhere, but I'm also learning. And also the communication part, in which you really try to be sensitive about different kind of cultures and different communication styles, and really try to adapt to that on the run, basically. So these communication styles for sure, having a good understanding on a data set and be able to put it together in a presentation that is digestible for a client, and also really have this bigger picture kind of approach to things sometimes. And be organized as well. That's also like another thing that you learn. Yeah,
that's always nice.
Yeah.
So I just saw one last question. Mm-hmm. It's what skills in the industry? What skills is the industry looking for? Would a person that just finished her or his PhD in academia would have them? And what is the biggest challenge for the transition from industry to academia?
Let's talk about a little bit. So the most natural kind of transition that I was also feeling like from my PhD to industry was really like a scientist position in biotech. You pretty much do the same thing. I mean, the experiments are going to be similar to what you were doing, so you don't really need a lot of extra skills into going into that. The only extra skills you really need is like, for instance, being able to collaborate with the team a little bit, to really work with the team, and not being like with your data, like, it's my data stuff. No, this doesn't work in biotech at all. And that's something that we many times do in academia, as I was doing it by myself back in the day. So a lot more of collaboration, like in teams and stuff, and much more extra communication between colleagues and supervisors. So yes, a lot of skills in that direction, soft skills that, again, you don't really learn every day, but really, really collaborations and a lot of communication. And this applies also to consulting as well as biotech, in my experience at least.